Welcome to another episode of the EsportsNext Podcast. I am your host, John Davidson, joined, of course, by the founder of the Esports Trade Association, Miss Megan Van Petten, as my co-host. And today we have someone from the esports team side, Kayci Evans, hailing from Evil Geniuses as their head of marketing and brand partnerships. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And literally, I need to say that you told me to turn off my notifications. And as soon as you started the intro, I think an email notification went off. So
Boom.
if that's in the show, extra flavor for that. But yeah, thank you guys for having me. Excited to see you guys in person in a couple weeks too.
Absolutely. You'll be coming from sunny Seattle, I think is what they call it.
Yes,
In the summer at least.
Very sunny Seattle. Sleepless, sunny, all the things. No, it has been nice here lately, but I feel like Chicago summers are way better. So I'll be looking forward to coming out that way.
There are hot dogs and pizza, Megan.
Spoiler
What can you tell
alert.
us about summer and NASCAR is racing through the city this year?
No one's even going to believe this. It's true. I like rainy days or snow.
No way.
Ways
No
are-
wonder you love Chicago. Megan's
Yeah.
always explaining to everybody why Chicago's best, and now we just found out she loves terrible weather. So it makes perfect sense.
That's why she loves it.
Don't come here, you might see the sun.
I actually don't like sunny days.
Well, you're going to hate esports next because it's going to be beautiful and sunny and warm and not cold or snowy.
I feel like I'm on the air admitting that, like, it's a secret. But the sun, it like hurts my eyes. I have to wear sunblock. You know, a rainy day.
I think this means you'd actually be a really great pro gamer because they hate the sun. We're inside all day.
Yeah, well, I like being outside. I do like being outside, but I prefer not the sun. I prefer a cloudy environment.
Got you. You want the snuggles. You want the cozy vibes.
I love the cozy vibes. Yeah.
I like warm and cozy vibes. So I'll just set the air conditioner inside, and I would love to step outside. And I wish it wasn't like 100 degrees like it is in Dallas right now, but I get 80, 85.
Yeah, see, I don't know how people do a desert. Like, it's like, oh my God. I'll take clouds and a beach all day long. Give me an umbrella.
That's why I left Texas, John. I'm originally from San Antonio. I was like, I'm getting out of here. It's too hot. Too hot.
It's hotter down there, though.
Props to you, though.
I'm holding it down for Texas. Well, you are holding it down for Evil Geniuses. We actually have a friend in common, one of your colleagues, Mr. Chris Diapollonio.
Oh, yes, I've heard of him.
I got to know him many moons ago. I was at GameStop. He was at the group that acquired Optic for a short time, the first one, first of multiple. And then he carried on his way, found his way to EG, and is now CEO. Do I have that right?
Yes, he is. He is the captain. Yeah, he's the captain of the ship. He's steering the ship. He's doing a great job. Funnily enough, in my interviews for EG, so I was like convinced that I had done horrible in my interviews with a few people. But when I specifically met Chris, we hit it off because he was an intern at the Commissioner's Office of Baseball, which is where my first job was.
Oh, cool.
And so
I didn't know that about him.
His first boss as an intern was a guy that I worked with for years once I ended up being in baseball. So immediately in my interview with EG, meeting Chris, I was like, okay, I might still have a chance here. I really hope I do, because me and Diaps hit it off. And I think he like opened the questions back to me, at the end of the interview. And I was like, well, what's your gamer tag? And he lied to me. He told me it was something lame. Like it was just like his name or something. And that's a lie. His gamer tag is Flick, which is a character. So anyways, yeah, there you go. Anyways, but yes, he's the man in charge, and he's doing a great job. So it's been a fun eight or so months since he took the reins.
That is so funny.
Yeah, wild.
That's so funny. I love when people don't want to tell you their gamer tag.
I know, it's like they get like you're embarrassed or something, or
like it's like it's private. Like it's like
Well, that I get. I wouldn't like my reason for not sharing my tag would be because I wouldn't want someone to know how horrible I am at a game. I wouldn't want them to be able to look up my rank. And so I'm like, maybe that could have been his excuse, but no, he's actually really good at everything he plays.
He's
So
just humble.
he's just humble. Yeah, he didn't want me to know he was like semi-pro Smash player back in the day. That's what it was.
Oh, wow.
I think what Chris would say as a great leader is that every leader is as good as their team. And so you are one of the top members of the wonderful Evil Geniuses team. Why don't you tell us, what do you do at EG? What's the day-to-day that you're focusing on?
Yeah, so I am the head of marketing and brand partnerships at EG. All of that kind of comprises our content, delivery and programming, our social media strategy, web, digital, all of that. It's also a lot of pitching to potential partners and coming up with creative concepts and creative direction for different marketing campaigns, whether they're EG branded, VCT for Valorant Americas branded and the league that we play in, or for a potential partner. So like some good news, we just started off stage 2 for VCT Americas. We started off with a win, which was awesome, but we also launched a partnership with Allbirds, for instance. And so yeah, so working with Chris, working with our team to really figure out, okay, well, what would a Allbirds esports partnership or what would those tactics look like to be really authentic to the esports brand, right? Well, it needs to feel like it's coming from our players. It needs to feel like it's coming from Potter, our coach, all those things to make it not feel like a hashtag ad, right? And so a lot of my job is focused on kind of connecting those brand dots, pulling it all together and figuring out the best way to put EG in front of our audience and potential new audiences. So I love my job. I can't believe I get to do it every day. It's so much fun. Yeah, it's great.
I mean, it's no small feat. Like,
yeah,
it's a big deal. But yeah, I mean, you've had a great career. I heard you've been in sports a long time, and you even got a sign over in Times Square.
I did. Oh, you heard about that. Yes, no, so prior to EG, I've been at EG for about 2 years now, but prior to that, I worked in New York City at the Commissioner's Office of Baseball. And so I led up their brand and content marketing team is what we called it there. And so a lot of that was looking at league events, league milestone moments, big tentpole events, whether it was Field of Dreams, recreating that for the first time or All-Star games. But one of my proudest moments and what you're alluding to is that for the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson Day, we had this great idea to change 42nd Street in Times Square to Jackie Robinson Way. And I, threw it out there in a brainstorm, like, whatever, we could do that. Like, how cool. And within like a week, we had the mayor on the phone. We're figuring out how to change the city street signs for the day. And then, several months later after that happened, I got an email. I had just started at EG. The project had completed, but I had gotten an email from a friend who was like, I'm in Cooperstown. I want you to know that Jackie Robinson Way sign is going up to Cooperstown. It's going to be in the Hall of Fame forever. Like, so cool. And so that was like, okay, I'm done with sports. I'm in a Hall of Fame. My idea made it there.
That's awesome.
And yeah, so that's just like a fun little tidbit, but the power of sports, right? The power of athletes, the power of people, and the power of Major League Baseball. My gosh, I didn't realize that we would be able to change the street sign that quick.
Something that always cracks me up, having been part of produced events and stuff, and Megan has done this as well, is what it actually takes to bring an idea or a campaign to fruition. And so I'm sure there were many steps, but to slim things down, since we don't have all day together here, what would be the one thing that we would not expect that is required or part of the process of changing a street name in Times Square, New York?
Gosh, it for sure would be like the city sidewalk ordinances. Like no one realizes that there's rules for sidewalks, but like where a trash can is, where a fire hydrant is, like that even affects like, oh yeah, we're going to have a cut the ribbon ceremony for the sign to be displayed. Like, well, we can't stand on the corner right where it's happening because there's too many people, like zoning and things like that. never again. Like never again would I want to mess with the city of anywhere, especially not the city of New York. So that probably is the real answer. I'm sure there's a better answer for like marketers and content people, but the real answer would be dealing with the city and like street patrolling.
That's so funny. Like many people whose desire is to grow their career in esports, you have successfully found your way into esports from an outside industry, although somewhat tethered in traditional sports. What advice would you give women who are listening, who are seeking to get into the esports industry? What did you do that was successful, or what are some things that you might do differently if you were giving advice to someone else?
Yeah, I love this question. I think the biggest thing that women or even female identifying people or minorities in general, but I know for sure women, and I've experienced like something we're really bad at is advocating for ourselves and actually verbalizing what we need. We like to complain about or vent, like we can vent, everyone can vent and complain, but it's the people who actually take that and say like, how can I make this better? Or what would fix this problem? And what's the initiative I need to take to fix it? Like that is what makes you a difference maker. And so my advice would be that like ask for what you want, say what your goals are, just put it out there. The first day of my internship at Major League Baseball, I went to the CEO of Advanced Media who oversaw like all of our digital function basically at the time. And I told him, I said, I'm a senior, I've graduated. This internship is only for 2 or 3 months for this summer, but my intention is to have a job after it. So I'm letting you know now.
Your job.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's what my mother wanted me to say was tell him you're coming for his job.
But
But
soften the delivery on the first day.
I love your mother.
Yeah. I toned it down. But I did. I told him, I said, look, like I moved to New York. I signed a 12-month lease, my guy. I'm here for as an internship for a couple months, but I'm staying. So if you want me to be an intern until I get full-time, like whatever. Like I was there. I was privileged enough to have that opportunity where my family could make it work for me as an intern. But, saying what you want and then putting it out there. And even if that means going to your manager and just kind of planting a seed to say like, hey, in 5 years, I want to be doing what that person's doing. Like, do you have any idea what the next step would be? So really
What's
like
the
taking
path,
that.
right? Yeah. How do I get there?
Accountability.
Or it's such a great point because, nobody's a mind reader. And
Right.
so
No.
I think a lot of times we might just assume people are thinking what we're thinking or our bosses, like, no, they're consumed with business priorities and all of this stuff and trying to get things accomplished with a team. And so it's rare, I'm sure it happens in some organizations, but it's rare that they purposely step in to you directly and say, hey, let me help you XYZ.
Yeah.
But what I found in a mentorship, a lot of people are intimidated to ask to be mentored, when many mentors see it as a great sign of respect and an honor to mentor someone. Like, oh, you think I know what I'm doing?
Totally. You want my wisdom? You think I have wisdom to give you? Like that is the highest honor, honestly.
It really is.
It really is. That's such a good point. Like, why is it so hard to ask for help or for direction? I don't know. But also that advice, like most people are willing to help. Most people are, if you go about it the right way.
That's right. Super interesting. And so obviously with, the Jackie Robinson example, that's an amazing idea. So clearly you have, go ahead, Megan.
Have you been there to the Hall of Fame yet to see it?
Not with it there, no.
Oh my God. You need that sign.
I know. Next time I'm on the East Coast, I'm carving out a rental car. I got to get myself up there.
Because it's just one of those things. Like, I think you should order a sign too, just because.
Oh, like a replica or something.
Exactly. Just remembering that, milestone, because it takes something to come up with those creative ideas.
Thank you.
And then to fulfill.
Yeah.
So you have this background, so I have every reason to believe you're great at your job.
Yes.
You're bringing on new clients, etc. I'm curious with the experience, doing events and partnerships in Major League Baseball versus esports, we typically see a lot of brands are confused with how to engage this skeptical, nuanced audience. What are some differences and maybe what are some similarities that you've seen in that role in the two different worlds?
Yeah. So far and away, the biggest discrepancy or like biggest gap of education, I think, in marketing and advertising in the two is that the esports broadcast, like the way that we broadcast our games, really opens up. Honestly, I think it makes it way more difficult with the way we're currently doing it as like esports as a whole. It makes it more difficult to sell massive sponsorships. So, like, for instance, with baseball, nobody owns the sport baseball. Nobody owns the
Right.
sport basketball. Like, no one can have that propriety like no one owns it. You get it.
Right.
Everything we do is owned by somebody else. Everything we play on is owned by somebody else. Every tournament that is run is selling their own assets, which includes some of the things we are part of, while the league is also selling their own assets. Like it's this constant, like, who's going to get the money when we should all be working together to figure out how we all get the money. So like right now for league revenue in traditional sports, you have regional sports networks and broadcasters where they're getting cuts of money from viewership there. Whereas on the flip side, if I want people to watch EG games on a certain platform, I currently have to pay for someone to cast our games. Okay. So that doesn't make sense. So it's free fandom. So when you're talking about sponsorship dollars, like you need even more to offset the operational costs of even getting your game online, if that makes sense. So where brands find the most hiccups is like they're going to teams one-on-one, they're doing these little sponsored deals, right? That's one way to do it. But maybe a better way would be, okay, Riot, you have a monitor, company or partnership with Zowie or whoever it is. All the teams in your league should be part of that Zowie sponsorship and get a cut of that, right? Like, are there other ways to think about how we build sponsorships, how we build viewership and dollars from viewership? Because right now nobody makes a penny except for Riot off of
Right.
viewership. So,
And to draw the contrast to the traditional sports, so typically the teams own the league, right? So and there's a rev share of sorts, right?
yes.
And it
So,
varies
yeah.
by sport or league, but like the NFL, there's 32 teams. There's a certain amount of rev share. Now, Jerry Jones is the only one who only owns his marks because he sued the NFL years ago to benefit that way, and that's why they're the most valuable sports franchise in the history of the world.
Yeah.
However, not to get too far down that rabbit hole, in esports, it's the publisher who owns the league. They own the IP, so you have to be within those guidelines. And then the teams are paying for a slot in that league generally. And so there's money on the publisher level, and then the ecosystem of the teams are finding it hard to get there. So let me ask you this, devil's advocate, since you do part of your job is bringing in brands and partners to EG and stuff. A lot of marketers, they look at esports and they're confused, right? And maybe there's a lack of data or there's a lack of the understanding of the structure, and all they know is their 9-year-old son does nothing but play video games, and there's like, I don't know anything, but I know we should be there. If I'm a marketer, why should I sponsor evil geniuses rather than going with what I know, which might be baseball, basketball, music, or other forms of entertainment? What is the reason brands should be in the esports space?
Yeah. I mean, the literal numerical reason is that this next generation coming up is watching more esports and they're watching traditional sports. So, off the top of my head, like in our sponsor decks, when we talk about our viewership for Valorant, it's, I think, second most viewed behind F1 or behind NBA. I can't remember. And then MLB, NFL, golf, everything else is behind it, hockey. And so that is what people, I believe, the next generation is showing in research. Like, this is the next form of competition. Our players are the next version of idols, right? Of heroes on the field, but they're heroes in game instead. Like, that is the connection that the current or future consumer, I should say, is drawing from our players. And so if you can get in early right now, you will be the authentic brand that was actually at the beginning of esports. A lot of people feel like esports already had its heyday in the last 5 or 10 years because of COVID, but it's actually just now stabilizing for a better future. And so I think it's critical. Like if your marketing team is doing the right research, it's going to tell you that you should be targeting Gen Alpha, Gen Z, and then it's going to tell you that video games and esports is the top 3 like things on their list, right? Other than maybe music, other than maybe TV and streaming, culturally, it's going to be games. So that for sure is a reason. But the way I'd also like explain it, and maybe this is a little bit off topic, but we basically are trying to sell broadcast rights to fans who can select anyone that they want to be the caster for that game, right? So like if you're a Cowboys fan and you want to only watch Skip Bayless, like technically
Bad example.
horrible example, but like if you were
Sorry, Skip, really keep going.
Yeah, but like if this was esports, you would go seek out Skip Bayless's Twitch and just watch his version of that game. And that's happening, tens of thousands of different times every match we play because there's tens of thousands of Twitch streamers and creators watching our game. So it's not comparing apples to apples. And that is the other thing, that education with sponsors and even new fans, parents of kids who are saying, I want to get a scholarship in Rocket League. Did you know that's a thing now? Like, this is for you. Understand that, it is bigger. It's just a larger net that we have to kind of catch first is kind of, I feel like a better way to look at it.
There's something so awesome about being on the wave and being very early to the party.
Yeah.
There's also something frustrating too. It's my third like big wave. I love it though. I would say I'm almost like addicted because the bond you get with the people is we call EsportsNext the big tentpole family reunion, which you'll feel when you get there. We were
going to call it that, but it didn't fit on the flyer, so we just call it EsportsNext.
But you'll feel the family. And it's that pain of not being taken seriously and like getting it before everyone does. And then remembering the people that were like, whatever. And then they're like, oh my God, wait, I get it. And being cool when they finally do call to them, like you said it right there.
Well, to take your career another level and what you're specifically talking about at EsportsNext, the big tentpole family reunion tour, is that what we're calling it?
Yes.
You are speaking on our panel that's all about representing the underrepresented, reaching not only minorities, but helping all sorts of people have the same opportunity in this space, same accessibility, being represented in the right way. As a woman in both traditional sports and esports, tell us a little bit why you're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah. Oh man. Like, there's so many reasons, but like ultimately, and it's the lamest reason I think, because a lot of people say it, but it's like when I was growing up and someone was asking me what I wanted to be, like the first thing I wanted to be was an astronaut. And everyone laughed because I don't think there was anyone that was a woman quite yet doing that.
Yeah.
But also I failed math, right? Like I kind of
it makes it hard to be an astronaut no matter what your gender is. Just gonna say, but keep going. I can't be, I'm not passing that test either.
Yeah, no. Like there were just, I realized I couldn't be an astronaut. Then it was, I wanted to be Britney Spears because whatever, that was the end all be all. Well, I couldn't sing.
Megan, you too, from what I've.
Yeah, right. All of us at some point. But my point being, like, then it finally landed on sportscaster because I discovered Erin Andrews. And that was the first time I remember me and my mom sitting down and she was like, you could do that.
Yeah.
you've played sports your entire life. You could be on camera if you needed to. You're already studying
Definitely.
journalism. Like you could do that. And I remember thinking like, well, I am the athlete because I played D1 college volleyball. So I was like, I am the athlete. Like I don't want to be on the necessarily on the side, on the sidelines, whatever. But of course came around to that. But so that sparked my like, what could I be in sports, to be honest?
Yeah.
And
I can so see that.
yeah. And so, I knew I wanted to work in sports. And then that just kind of led to like, well, what connections do I have? How can I network? Who do I know from Baylor? Right. Like, I hate to say it, but nepotism is always going to help. Like, it's always going to help.
I love that. Well, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. And so I was at a tailgate for I think our first like bowl game in like a century or something insane because Baylor was horrible my first couple of years there. And then RG3 won the Heisman while I was there.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I don't even remember what your question was. What was your question?
Because I'm on I could use another co-host.
Oh, you're so sweet.
John's like, I was thinking the same thing.
You're
Great
so
minds think alike.
I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, what makes you so passionate based on your career on this topic?
That's right. So sorry. I got sidetracked.
You're good.
So just the idea of somebody seeing, initially it was like a girl can work at baseball in the commissioner's office. I was one out of maybe 3 women that sat in a room of about 22 men. Like, and we were called the fishbowl room because it looked like a fishbowl. It was the social media room. So it had TVs everywhere, glass wall. Everyone was always like taking pictures of us. And it was like working in a fraternity house. I mean, I had a running list of all the crap that I heard in that room that made me feel uncomfortable. Right. And that was like the first thing where I realized like, holy shit, this is really a thing in sports. Like it's not just like the obvious, oh, somebody, touched me here, slid their hand on me, this or whatever. It's also just the day-to-day like banter, like a girl couldn't walk in the room without somebody commenting on her ass, excuse my language, but like that is not a safe working environment. And so from that very start, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to band together. And luckily I had a boss at the time. She's an amazing mentor, still is to this day. And she would make sure she'd rally all the women together across departments. MLB was great in making sure that we were given resources to, go hang out, do events, stuff like that, whatever. But anyways, why I'm so passionate about it is because I have experienced so many things from, again, like very surface level, like, oh, that was questionable. Should I be like raising a hand to that? To very horrible things that unfortunately happen in this space because women are not taken seriously. I've had players question me in interviews and say, do you even know who that is? When I ask them a question about somebody, when at the same time, like I'm in gaming because I'm a gamer at heart. I always have been. I'm more like a Nintendo Switch kind of person. Wasn't really like gunning for esports necessarily. I wanted to be in gaming, but esports is where I could bring my knowledge. And it was like, I can get onto a League of Legends game with my current profile, with my gamer tag. I cannot get onto a League of Legends game without somebody asking me what size cup I wear. Okay. And that's just because I have a cute little like girly name. It has nothing to do with what's in the name tag, right? So all these things, like, this is not normal. This is not a place that I want to live in. This is not a future I want my daughters, if I have children, to have to live in. That's why I'm doing it. And like, I feel empowered doing it too, right? Being given the forum to talk about it, you feel empowered. And so I'm thankful to be given the platform, from you guys too. But there's just so much, like, still so much room for improvement.
There really is. And that's why we have a DEI panel.
Yeah.
It's not,
yeah.
And it's so cool, myself being a woman founder. When people ask me if I game, I oftentimes say, you know what? Nobody ever asked me if I played football when I worked at my last association. So it's like, because oftentimes it's very true. We can work in sports without playing the sport. John, do you play football? It's like,
not anymore. Getting old over here.
That's fun. That's fun. And my answer to, it depends on like what mood you catch me in, but sometimes I'll say we all game. And I gamed before you,
Yeah.
like sometimes I feel defensive. Not
Yeah.
often. I mean, I want to like just be cool most of the time, but there's been times.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think like we have such an opportunity to teach kindness. And that for me is why this panel will always be a staple. Like I love having all women panels without it being DEI.
Yeah.
We
Definitely.
did, so, and John's been so good. And we have so much opportunity and we have this platform and we're
Yeah.
so fortunate.
Yep. Got to use it.
And one thing I think I've seen in this space, and we were commenting on this the other day when we were doing our panel prep call, was a fellow speaker mentioned on the call, in traditional sports, this is happening a lot too, but it's not as confronted as often. And in esports, I think her comment was, it may appear worse in esports because we're talking about it.
Yeah.
This is happening everywhere, but while absolutely want to make the strides absolutely necessary as fast as possible to get where we need to get in this regard, one positive is the willingness to discuss the topic and develop solutions for change, not just to say this isn't happening.
1000%. And
Yeah.
that is like, honestly, that might be the biggest takeaway when comparing the two, in terms of traditional sports versus esports, because there's something about traditional sports being traditional. We're calling it traditional for a reason, y'all. Which is that it is passed on and it's been going on and on and on. These sports, they have been creating their culture for these sports for 100 years now. And so that culture stemmed from whatever it was like 100 years to start. We are fortunate in that esports has started in a modern era and is, being forged and kind of like paving the way by more open-minded, more diverse, younger, all these things. And so what I think what we're actually seeing in esports too is that the folks that maybe were fans of certain titles like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, some of our original esports titles, those are going to be the fan pools where you see less warm intros to diversity in esports.
Yeah.
My experiences. Whereas like if you start, if you're joining the Valorant community or Rocket League or Fortnite, like those games themselves and those developers have really taken on diversity in their gameplay and who shows up as characters, right? And so you get a more, you get an audience that's more open to those things as well. And games are only going to get more diverse. They're only going to get crazier. They're only going to get more fun. And so I think that slowly, like for sure, esports just with so many different games in gaming and therefore in esports and so many different types of audiences, like I think it kind of shows that the louder people are the ones who are fighting for equality. Like that's a great sign for the future because they are the louder ones now. And that's awesome. Traditional sports though, I think they still got their, they still got men in charge, unfortunately, that have been in charge for years, for decades, right? And they know everyone to silence and they will do it. And so that's why you're not going to get as much back and forth and debate unless you're in some of those Reddit corners like I am on the traditional sports side.
Right. And with the younger audience in esports and gaming as well, you're able to impact younger generations, which is positive because then these young people to adults are growing up with that awareness. A lot of times awareness is the biggest thing, right? For someone, especially being a man in business, I'm not experiencing all of the different, especially the nuanced things, right? That may make you ladies feel like, oh, I don't have the opportunity or I'm not being included in ways and all these things. And so knowing there's the issue and then understanding how to help are two big principles to help us get where we want to go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like men can help in a lot of ways, right? Like I've I've been in great game, chats or 5 squads, 5 stacks or whatever in league where I have a friend, Austin, like let's say someone on the opposing team makes a sly comment, like he's the one that replies, it's not me. Like say something when you see something, say something, right? It's the same thing. For this, like if you've got coworkers, if you have a sister and you're at the grocery store and someone makes like these things happen all the time, like you can be an ally in various ways. But I think specifically online in the esports and gaming culture, it's like speak up on Twitter when people start acting nasty, like go to bat for the people that you would go to bat for, even online. Like we need more. We've got enough keyboard warriors, like where the other opposite keyboard warriors to go against them.
Yep.
Well, and it sounds too like, Kayci, I've heard so much of your story. You seem to be a very driven person, rather headstrong. I'm saying that in a positive way, right? You're a trailblazer. But I believe, if I'm not wrong, your mother was a CEO herself. So the apple may not fall too far from the tree here when you're thinking, I can be an astronaut and I can do this and I can do that. Your mom is someone who is a trailblazer herself. Is that right?
She is, yes. So my mom is such a badass. She is the co-founder and current CEO and had been the CEO before she took some years off and regretted it. But co-founder and CEO of Massage Heights, which is a franchise company. It's membership-based massage clinic. They're in the US and Canada. And they started that when I was in probably 6th or 7th grade. I mean, and it's crazy. Like I can remember everything about their step and their process from, building this company. I think they started with like a loan of $10,000 from a friend, and then my dad's 401k, whatever he could cash out at the time. And yeah, it's been so cool getting to kind of see, like, my dad was a really good man about like, I don't need like certain things from this. Like, I just want to do right by my family and like support Shane, my mom. Like, you should be the CEO, you should be the visionary. Like, and so even from a young age, like I just saw that it didn't matter, who was doing what in terms of work. And both of my parents are super entrepreneurial, but my mom specifically, yeah, she's like super visionary, always has really great ideas, wants to just hash out anything. We're sending out links or whatever. She's got a friend who's got a new franchise that they're opening. It's like, what can we brainstorm? And so that has definitely been a huge inspiration for me. She has, and we talk, now she knows esports because I call her and I'm like, what would you do if, you were trying to do this? And she's like, well, what the heck is that? I'm like, well, hold on. Let me explain this first and then we can dig in.
A lot of context.
Yes, exactly. And then my dad is like weirdly, like he's not hands-on with the company anymore. He's doing his retirement thing, but he's also always been an inventor. So he's actually invented a few like sports products that he will just create the science and everything behind, and then he'll sell them, like, and that's it. And then people can go make them. So he's also very entrepreneurial. And so I think something with that combo. Yeah, for sure. Got it from them. Thankful
That's
for
really cool you grew up in that environment. And also that you had both parents modeling that complementary behavior as well.
Right?
Sometimes you have one parent in the home and it's like mom was this badass, but also had to be, due to necessity. And she was able to lean into her natural giftings in those ways. But it's cool that your dad recognized your mom's ability and in partnership, took a different role, I'm sure also very important, but enabled her to take the lead because we kind of need both of the sides of this equation, right? Everybody has to be aware and willing to put the right person in charge, regardless of who that is, and give them the opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because I don't think I've realized even until probably the last few years of like adulthood and just kind of really being in the weeds at EG in a different level than I was obviously at MLB and things like that, like the appreciation for that. I did not realize that until recently, or that it was even an odd thing, honestly. Not just to have the parent, switcheroo kind of happen with dad mostly at home or like whatever, but both of them being super entrepreneurial too. The last thing I'll say with that is like, I am 16 years older than my very youngest sister. So I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and there's 16 years between the last one and me. So when they were at the height of their company, literally going national, I was the at-home babysitter. So part of it is like, if they didn't have me to watch the kid, that was a surprise at the same time as starting their business, then they would have been able to both put so much effort towards it and have so much success. So there's also some funny like nuance to that too. But my first car came with a car seat in it. So literally I was like team mom. Yeah. So
everybody contributes. Every team member contributes. Well, to end this episode on a very positive note, and this is really a question for both of you, because you both have remarkable experience being very successful women in sports. A lot of times we talk about the challenges or the drawbacks, and those things are important. But we also talked on our panel prep call the other day about it's important to also recognize what's being done right or has been done right, because it recognizes the people, the companies, and it also is an opportunity to repeat those things, whether it be in other companies or other industries. So to both of you, whoever would like to take it first, I would say, what have you seen as either done well or a great sign of moving in the right direction, whether it be in your current role or a previous one?
I'll say something that was a really big compliment last year. My old boss from my last association came to our conference. I think he was talking to both of us, John. And he was standing there, and he surprised me. And he ran the fantasy sport. He was the founder, I think, of the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. I was hired very early on to pull it together. And he says to me, "How'd you do it?" And I was like, "Do what?" Because it was like I had done it still larger at the other association. And he says, "How'd you get so many girls here?"
Oh.
And I was like, one woman at a time. And it took a lot. It was honestly 10 times the work to get an inclusive community built. It took something. It took a lot of education, a lot of time, a lot of care. And when he said, "Man, like this is what you want." And I was like, this isn't even close. We're like hardly touched the surface. But then I went to his event right after ours, John. I flew out to, and I was like, yeah, we made it. Because it was about, 95 men, maybe 95% men. And we're about, I would say we're 50-50. Like, I don't know and the diversity is
and
really
our team is female founded and run.
So that was it's funny how these little things like that one went deep for me. Because I was saying to myself, and then he said, "Now you got to get everyone here." Because the event, our event is, we're still a baby association. It's going to take a long time, especially building it, one person at a time, one conversation at a time, which I think is why this show is so special, exclusively for our speakers and attendees.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. So, and it means so much to give this platform to you and for you to come out and do what you're doing in your busy life. This is one of my favorite things. So I'll go with that. And that was Rick Wolf.
Love it.
Yeah. How about you, Kayci?
I feel like this is a cop-out, but I have to say it. So EG has the winningest female coach and female player basically ever in all of esports. For sure, FPS titles, but I gotta think all of FPS sports or all esports in Christine Potter Chi. And so being able to, I think part of why I also love my job so much is like, I don't just get to talk about gaming and video games and esports, but like we have the female prodigy leading our team.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we have a female coach on the world stage of the fastest growing esport right now in Valorant, who has won a championship under her belt already by building up talent that no one had heard of. She's currently doing it right now for the second time. Like, we could go back to back and she could have 10 world titles. Like, she'd be the most decorated esports coach ever.
So
That's amazing. So for sure, like, that is a sign. The fact that women, that girls can see that, you can have a head coach coaching men, coaching women, coaching, I don't care what you look like, right?
yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And like, traditional sports can't say that. They've got coaches on the sidelines that are women, but they don't have any head coaches that are women that are winning championships and kicking ass and taking names. Like, that's pretty damn cool.
That's really
Hopefully
cool.
it happens soon. Well, and it's cool too to see people like yourself, Kayci, who are, on the organization side, on the business side, who are leaders as well, and helping women and girls understand this is a possibility, and also within the same organization, seen on the stage that same representation is there, and hopefully it continues to grow, and that's a big part of what we advocate for. And excited to have you at the conference July 7th through 9th in Chicago. So if you're listening and you're inspired by Kayci, you want to learn more about Evil Geniuses, amazing partnerships, the Baseball Hall of Fame, how to change a street sign, all of these things, Kayci will be there in Chicago in just a couple weeks from now. So Kayci, thank you so much. Megan, thank you as well for what you offer this association industry as a fantastic woman in sports yourself, and great representation. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the Esports Next podcast.